I'm Mariam, and these are all my favorite books that I read in November of 2025. I will say that unfortunately, November was not like a good reading month for me in that I wasn't like obsessed with a lot of the books I read. I do believe I also DNF'd a lot of this month. I'm not sure. But yeah, so none of the books that I read here. No, actually, there is one book that I'm obsessed with, but the other three I'm not obsessed with. And we'll start with the one I actually liked least, which is Not in God's Name Confronting Religious Violence by Robbie Lord, Jonathan Sacks. Now, why do I like this least? Because there was a part of this book that I really, really, really didn't like. On the other hand, there was a part of this book that I liked amazingly, and if it just had been that book, I would have felt differently. But basically, this book is kind of like trying to figure out why there is violence based on religion and what to do about it. And the part I didn't like is, well, actually, there's two parts. And this book is divided into like three parts. One, the beginning, that it's talking about like what the idea of why there's religious violence, and it's like talking about the psychological theories. And I did like that part. I didn't like the part where it kind of felt like it was apologizing for non-Jews for being a Jew, but I understand that he has to be diplomatic. Then the part that I really, really, really liked was he goes through basically all of Genesis and looks at all the sibling rivalries there and tries to explain them in a different way of why the sibling rivalries there aren't actually telling us to be in rivalry with each other now as we become as after we become religions instead of siblings. And I really, really like that part, and it's going to affect me for the rest of my life. I know it. And then the third part is the part that I didn't like, which is that he was like trying to propose a solution, but I felt it was really weak. Like he obviously couldn't find a solution, and again, I felt like he was apologizing for being a Jew. Um, like, well, not apologizing for being a Jew, but kind of having to be like, we're exactly the same as you, and it's all right that you killed us for years. And again, I understand why, but I'm sick and tired of it. I am sick and tired of it. So yeah, but the main thing that bothered me is that he couldn't really didn't really find any way, like the solutions that he did propose, he didn't propose terms of action. Like it's nice to propose a solution, but you need a form of action. Then I read Across the Desert by Dusty Bowling. This is a middle grade about a girl who is not in the best family situation, and her and she gets bullied to school a lot. And her main thing, the thing that lets her escape from her life, is she goes to the library and she watches a girl, also around her age, live stream on what's basically the tricycle equivalent of a plane flying all across the Arizona desert. And our girl lives in Phoenix. Then one day she sees this plane crash. And nobody believes her that she saw this girl crash. It ends up actually being good reasons for why nobody believes her. And she decides to go and find this girl and rescue her because no one will listen to her. And I very much thought this book was going to be over the top when I was going to do it, but I actually really, really liked it. I thought, like I said, the reasons for why no one believes her are actually very realistic and so I thought that was very well done. And I really enjoyed reading like all of her adventure and what happens, and my heart was beating fast at some points, and I thought that was great. The only thing I didn't like was the ending. Felt kind of, as we got closer to the end, not the ending itself. The ending itself was fine, but as we got closer to the end, it kept on giving more and more like morals, like outright morals in the text of the book. But honestly, I've mostly forgotten about it, and I just remember the adventure and what happened at the end, which I did like. So yeah, so actually, I've mostly forgotten about that. Then I read A Matter of Execution by Nicholas and Olivia Atwater. So this is a total fantasy world, which I loved that it was a total fantasy world. Even though I also learned that I really like historical fiction this year. And like historical fantasy. I knew I liked historical fiction. I thought I didn't like historical fantasy, and now it turns out I do. And it follows a goblin who is wrongly accused of crime and is about to be executed when his crew helps him escape because he flies a dirigible, I suppose. And they also helped the other guy who was supposed to be executed with him escape too. And this guy asked them to come help and save his friend, which they did. And stuff is crazy. A lot of crazy stuff happens. I really like this book, and there's not another one in the series so far, but I hope there will be. Oh, actually, I think there is. Tales of the Iron Rose. Yeah, so I want to read that. And lastly, the book that I am obsessed with, that I talked about the first book in the series, this is the second book in the series, so I talked about the first book in the series in the October version of this, and that is Constance Verity Saves the World by A. Lee Martinez. So the first book is about our main character, Constance Verity, who is a superhero. She's, in fact, the superhero. And in the first book, she wants to stop being a superhero. And in this book, so it's called Constance Verity's Last Adventure. In this book, it's called Constance Verity Saves the World. And this is not as epic a plot as the first book. It's mainly about her and her boyfriend's relationship. But as I mentioned in the October version of this, I really, really like the characters in here. And I'm going to say here, that I also really like the character relationships. And I love how much thought and building was put into it. So it's a very different book, but I loved it so much. And I loved how natural the progression of Connie and her boyfriend's relationship felt. So yeah, those are all my favorite books from November.